The Kenya Elite, Part 2. Between 1925 and 1940, we had the emergence of a new elite in Kenya. The old elite that had fought the resistance wars against the British military invasion of Kenya had by and large been defeated, been killed off, and been exiled by the British. And in their place was a new elite, a new church-educated, European name-having, and very compromised elite. When Harry Thuku came back from prison, he embodied the new spirit of compromise. He made a decision to sell his soul to the British in exchange for a small piece of land. He promised the British to support the British colonial state, never to question its fundamentals. And the fundamentals of the British colonial state was European supremacy and European ownership of each and every important industry, important land, domestic and foreign policy. Once this happened, the rest of the emergent elite modeled itself after Harry Thuku. And we will see how this later on affects Kenya. So between 1925 and 1940 is when we see the rise of the coconut elite in Kenya. Between that period is when the British consolidated their state and created a class of Africans who were loyalists to the British and traitors to the Africans. And what is interesting about this class of people is that all of them had European names. It was extremely important for them to have a European name in order to show their loyalty to the Europeans. The other thing with characteristics we find about this elite was that all of them worshipped Europeans as God. When you go into the temples anywhere in Kenya today, where people practice the European religion, within those temples or within those buildings, those church buildings, you will find that the Africans have set up, altars, and above the altar, you'll normally find a statue of a European, or you'll find cartoon paintings of Europeans. And this is what Africans worship as God. So in Kenya, Africans in Kenya worship Europeans as God, and they are fully convinced that God is a European. And so we find that the elite that emerged after 1925 also started worshiping, Europeans as God, giving themselves European names and their children European names. And so the contradiction was, how do you fight the same person who you call God? How do you fight the Mzungu if the Mzungu is God? How do you take a gun and shoot at the Mzungu if the Mzungu is God? You'll be shooting at God. So all of them, as they became more and more involved in the cult of worshipping Europeans, they became less and less African. They became basically coconuts. Basically, a coconut is brown on the outside and white on the inside, and then it has a lot of empty space in between. And this is the main characteristic of the elite in Kenya from 1925 until today. It is very difficult to succeed and become an elite member of Kenyan society if you're not a coconut. It's an elite made up of coconuts and for the benefit of other coconuts, and ultimately for the worship and deification of Europeans as God. Now, so when you look at this elite, when the Mau Mau emerged in 1940, it is this elite that was very quick to condemn the Mau Mau and to be totally opposed to the Mau Mau and to even raise arms to fight against the Mau Mau. And the problem that they had with the Mau Mau was very simple. The Mau Mau were not just calling for land. They were not just saying we want our land back. No, the Mau Mau were trying to overthrow the colonial state. Now, the colonial state is more than just the symbols of the state. The colonial state is about who owns the economy, who owns the monopolies within the country, who controls the domestic policy, who controls the foreign policy, who controls all the best land. So the Mau Mau were saying total decolonization, total withdrawal of the British from Kenya. Now, the elite, the African elite, were opposed to that. They did not want the total withdrawal of the British from Kenya. And we will see how this becomes very, very important in later years. But all we can say is that the elite, the emergent African elite in Kenya, in those years, they were basically, Europeans in African skins. And they would be instrumental in the next stages of the evolution of Kenya.